Greetings to all viewers and followers of Barangay Canada. Joining me on the program today is the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship, the Honorable Marc Miller. Mr. Miller, welcome to Barangay Canada.
Thanks for having me on with you, Chris.
Well, it's a privilege to have you here, sir. Now, Mr. Minister, the plight of international students in Canada has been in the headlines lately, and you have also made announcements to address problems with the international student program. Would you like to share about these developments?
Yeah, for sure. And let me first, thanks for having me on. This is, speaking to members of principally the Filipino community that listen to you is really important. It's a million plus community that is growing in Canada and really, really important to the future of this beautiful country. In the international student sphere, similarly, it was one of the top countries where we get some of the best and brightest from the Philippines to come here and study and perhaps go home and shine in the Philippines, or work here and perhaps have an ability to become permanent resident or a Canadian citizen. My principal concern with some of the announcements that I made in the last few weeks is to make sure that we have integrity in the system, getting rid of fraud, but making sure we're not doing it on the backs of these international students that are here really to learn and to get some of the best of Canada's post-secondary education system. Unfortunately, in the last few years, just the volume of folks coming in, regardless of the source country, has just been enormous, and that has affected the quality of the system. This needs to be a quality pathway for some of the top talent to come into Canada. So some of the steps I made, putting a cap on the total amount and spreading it out amongst provinces who have a principal role in managing post-secondary institutions was key to this, but also making sure that it's fair. And so that is the spirit of the move that I've made in the last few weeks, in the last month, and they'll continue making sure that those students get the best experience they can of Canada, perhaps jobs afterwards, and that the system isn't abused by some bad actors that do exist, and we have to get rid of them. We have the responsibility of the government to crack down when we don't see this going in the way that it was intended to in the first place.
Now, thank you for sharing that overview there, Mr. Minister. But I was also approached by viewers of the program, and they were asking about the fact that there was a doubling of the monetary requirement to become an international student. Could you expand on this, please?
Yeah, one of the steps I took in December, just before the more significant move that I took a few weeks ago with respect to the cap and limiting volume, was to make sure that those people coming to Canada have the financial requirements to live here and not not suffer the dire consequences of not being able to afford housing, food, etc. Students are very vulnerable, whether they are domestic or international, and we want to make sure that at the intake point, when we accept people, that we are making sure that they do have the money that they need. It costs a lot to be an international student. Institutions in Canada have seen that. People paying 4 or 5 times what my own kids pay, and they've seen an advantage to that. But at the end, where the federal government controls this, we have to make sure that people do have the financial requirements to be able to live and frankly thrive in Canada, and that's very important. Our standards were perhaps half of the international norm. We hadn't changed them in years, and so that this brings us up to the international standard where we compete with other countries for the top talents, for example, from the Philippines.
So essentially what you're saying, this is for their own good, so to make sure that they have enough money when they come here, that they're going to be able to support themselves. Is that correct?
Yeah. Often these kids, and they're young, I say kids, but they're young adults, are alone, and they need to make sure that they have the financial requirements to live here. A lot of them are working, 20, 30, 40-hour jobs, and that isn't conducive to a great student experience. So I understand that it costs a lot, but we can't be naive as a country and say to ourselves, it's only 10 or 11,000 as part of getting the permit. We have to make sure that at the outset these people have at least $20,000+ at least at the outset, so they can come here and set themselves up and get going with programs that do cost a lot of money. So I think that's an important move, and hopefully it doesn't unduly prejudice some people that perhaps don't have the financial means. But again, it isn't free to live in Canada, as people well know these days.